love you. Three incredibly powerful words, three words that we often use together, three words that we often don't really mean quite what we say. We talk about loving ice cream, we love our dog, we love our spouse. But when's the last time you told God you love him? Not last time you felt it, last time you said it. Because just as it is with your spouse, it's one thing to feel it, it's an entirely different thing to say it. This morning's psalm, Psalm number 18, David says it because he means it. This is one of our longest psalms yet, if not the longest psalm we've reviewed yet. It's way longer than anything we've looked at this point. It's 50 verses long. I could break it up into two sections or three, but I want to look at it as a unit because that's how David intended it to be, a song to be sung at one time as one unit. And so we're going to read the whole psalm, and then we're going to come back and look at bits and pieces of it, trying to find out exactly what it is about God that David loves and why he felt so compelled to say that to God's face in this particular song. So let's read Psalm number 18. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I'm saved from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me, the torrents of destruction assailed me, the cords of Sheol entangled me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord. To my God I cried for help. From his temple he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ears. Then the earth reeled and rocked. The foundations also of the mountains trembled and quaked because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He came swiftly on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, thick clouds dark with water. Out of brightness before him, hailstones and coals of fire broke through his clouds. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High uttered his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. And he sent out his arrows, and scattered them. He flashed forth lightnings and routed them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, and the foundations of the world were laid bare at your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils. He sent from on high, he took me, he drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy, and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The Lord dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord and have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his rules were before me, and his statutes I did not put away from me. I was blameless before him, and I kept myself from guilt. So the Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his sight. With the merciful you show yourself merciful. With the blameless you show yourself blameless. With the purified you show yourself pure. With the crooked you make yourself seem tortuous. For you save a humble people, but the haughty eyes you bring down. For it is you who light my lamp. The Lord my God lightens my darkness. For by you I can run against a troop, and by my God I can leap over a wall. This God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord proves true. He is a shield for all those who take refuge in him. For who is God but the Lord? And who is a rock except for our God? The God who equipped me with strength and made my way blameless. He made my feet like the feet of a deer and set me secure on the heights. He trains my hands for war so that my arms can bend the bow of bronze. You have given me the shield of your salvation, and your right hand supported me, and your gentleness made me great. You gave me a wide place for my steps under me, and my feet did not slip. I pursued my enemies and overtook them, and they did not turn back till they were consumed. I thrust them through so that they were not able to rise. They fell under my feet. For you equipped me with strength for the battle. You made those who rise against me seek under me. You made my enemies turn their backs to me, and those who hated me I destroyed. They cried for help, but there was none to save. They cried to the Lord, but he did not answer them. I beat them fine as dust before the wind. I cast them out like the mire of the streets. You delivered me from the strife with enemies, or with the people. You made me the head of the nations. People whom I had not known served me. As soon as they heard of me, they obeyed me. Foreigners came cringing to me. Foreigners lost heart and came trembling out of their fortresses. The Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and exalted be the God of my salvation. The God who gave me vengeance and pursued peoples under me, or subdued peoples under me, who delivered me from my enemies. Yes, you exalted me above those who rose against me. You rescued me from the man of violence. For this I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations, and sing to your name. Great salvation belongs to his king, and who shows steadfast love to his anointed, to David and his offspring forever. So a long psalm, a song that begins with the words, I love you, and then explains why. Somewhere along the way, you may have picked up a verse here and there that you recognize as maybe being part of a modern day hymn or a chorus. You might have also picked up on the fact that you feel like you've read this psalm somewhere before, but it may not have been the book of Psalms. In fact, you may have read almost these exact same words in 2 Samuel chapter 22. Or maybe it's you recognize some of the echoes from this psalm in the song of Jonah when he cried out from the belly of the big fish. And so common themes, big ideas running throughout this that we see in multiple places. But for the sake of time, we're not going to be able to go through every verse, not look at every word as we go. But I want to call your attention to a few things about how this psalm is put together, and then encourage you this morning to take the psalm back out after we're done. You read through it again and use it as an outline, if you will, for your own prayer this morning about God and your love for him. And so, as we think about this psalm, the psalm begins with, I love you, Lord, my strength. And then he begins to explain why. The Lord is my rock and my fortress, my deliverer, my God, my rock, my shield, the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. David on and on goes about how much he loves God because God is his source of encouragement, his strength, his hope. In other words, he loves God because of who God is, because of his relationship with God. It's not about what God has given him. It's what God brings him in terms of comfort. But what's fascinating is you look at verses 1 through 15, if you want to break down this passage, essentially what David does here at the beginning of the song is talk about God's response to David's cries. He's in the midst of turmoil. He talks about death has encompassed him. Torrent of destruction has assailed me in verse 4. The cords of Sheol entangled me. That's that language from the book of Jonah. The snares of death confronted me. So in verse 6, he says, in my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God, I cried for help. And then here comes the encouraging word for you this morning, perhaps. From his temple, he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ear. We have, as Jonathan Edwards once said several hundred years ago, a God who hears our prayers. And so David cries out, God hears him, and God responds. God gets up and doesn't merely hear the cry, he responds. The earth reeled and rocked, verse 7. Foundations of the mountains trembled, they quaked, because God was angry. He heard and he responded. It was an emotional, heartfelt, if you will, response from God. Smoke went up from his nostrils, fire from his mouth, glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens, he came down on a cloud. Think of the language of Jesus one day returning on a cloud. It's drawn from passages like this. He made the darkness his covering. He's arriving. Before him, lightning and thunder and all those things. God responds to our prayers. He's listening and he will respond. Verses 16 through 32 of this psalm then seem to describe God's rescue of David. He's not only coming and responding, he's going to rescue David. Verse 16, he sent from on high. He took me. He drew me out of the waters. Verse 17, he rescued me. He talked about the enemies. Verse 18, they confronted him, but the Lord was his support. And so on he goes again about how God will rescue him, that God is his hope, that God will pull him away from the enemy, rescue him in a mighty and powerful, visible way in which God gets the credit for it. The next portion of the psalm, verses 33 to 43, are David's response, bolstered by the encouragement of God's presence, above God's abiding help. David responds and, if you will, fights back. Verse 33 to 43 talk about this. I want to just point out one thing for the sake of time, and then we're going to move on quickly to the end here. Verse 33, he made my feet like the feet of a deer, and he set me secure on the heights. Think of Israel, the Rocky Mountains, the cliff faces. Think of goats. Sometimes we think of mountain goats who climb up the sides of mountains. Well, there in the Middle East, they have deer who can do that. And the picture here is David is talking about God has made him like a deer. He's able to climb the heights safely and securely. Think about how many times David hid from King Saul in the mountainsides, in the caves, and up among the cliffs. If you've read maybe your King James Bible, it talks about he's made my feet like a hind. That's a type of deer, hind's feet. In fact, if you like children's stories or if you like allegories like Pilgrim's Progress, there's a great book called Hind's Feet on High Places from an author named Hannah Hurnard. You can find it on Amazon or somewhere else very easily. It's an allegory drawn from the language of Psalm 18. And it takes a woman, a young woman, whose name is Much Afraid. Everything scares her. She's timid. She's afraid she doesn't have enough faith. She's afraid she's going to fail. She's afraid life is going to take the best of her, until one day God rescues her and makes her feet like hind's feet, and he places her on high places. And then, like David, she responds in strength to the world and the challenges around her. Encourage you to read that if you're looking for a little encouragement, a pick-me-up. Maybe you've got young children. It's a great way to give them biblical concepts in the form of a story and a character they can probably recognize and identify with. The last part of the psalm here, real quickly, begins in verse 44, 45, and really runs to the end, specifically verses 46 to 50. And this is David's response of praise to God. The Lord lives. Blessed be my rock. Exalted be the God of my salvation. Again, you recognize that perhaps from a modern hymn. The God who gave me vengeance, he subdued the peoples, he delivered me from the enemies, he exalted me above those who rose against me, you rescued me. He's recognizing that all that he has, all that he enjoys, comes from God. And so he ends the psalm that began with, I love you, Lord, with these words, for this I will praise you, O Lord, among the nations, and I'll sing to your name. We respond to God's graciousness to us by praising and worshiping him. Great salvation he brings to his king. Now, David's talking about himself. God has brought salvation to him. But again, it's more than that, as so many of these psalms are. It's also messianic. And he shows steadfast love to his anointed. The one he's anointed, Hamashiach. That's where we get the word Messiah. He shows steadfast love to his anointed. To David, yes, and his offspring forever. Those who are connected to David, both the Messiah, who is a son of David, and his offspring, those who are forever connected to David through the Messiah, God brings them great, steadfast, ongoing love. This morning, if you're struggling, this morning, if you're disappointed, cling to the God, the rock of your salvation, and then give him the praise for it. Tell him you love him, and then live in the way that proves that.